And so one would think that a fair-minded people, bereft of evidence, forced to speculate, faced with the question of which was more ultimate, the personal or the impersonal, would be equally divided.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting point, right? He says,
Hmm.
so let's just say, let's clear our mind to say, so what might be the case? Is the world more fundamentally personal or impersonal before we even consider anything or look at anything? What would you think? Well, he'd say basically it might, if you asked 100 people, 50 might say one, 50 might say another, right? That's what we would expect, right? Before we examine kind of a, equally divided kind of opportunity.
Right, right. But he says, but no, they almost always gravitate towards the view that if there is any absolute at all, that absolute must be impersonal. And if there is no absolute, that is the same as chance or fate being absolute, an equally impersonalist view.
Yeah. So when you ask the question, he says, from people he's observing always gravitate toward the impersonal, right? He says, for instance, when scientists seek the causes of things, they almost always assume that the personal elements in the universe can be explained by the impersonal, right? Matter, laws, motion, rather than the other way around. They just assume that they gravitate toward the impersonal as an explanation, is what he's suggesting. And when scientists seek for absolutes, for example, the origin of the universe, they seek for an elementary particle, impersonal, or a universal law, theory of everything, impersonal, and an initial motion, the Big Bang, some type of impersonal origin, right? Or a combination of these various things. So the question he asked then is, why is this so? Why do they gravitate or lean more toward the impersonal? Is it not initially, at least, equally plausible that the impersonal matter, motion, force can be explained by the decisions of a person, right? So why is it? Seems like it's equally plausible. It could be explained one way or the other,
Mhm.
but they seem to lean toward the impersonal. Why?
Right. So he goes on to say then that we all have observed how persons create and harness impersonal objects and forces to do their bidding. In a factory, human workers produce a tractor, designed and planned by people. A farmer uses the tractor to plow his field. But we have never seen a plowed field produce a farmer or a tractor produce a workforce. I think communism tries to uh, undo that a little bit, but so far that just ends in death and starvation. So probably not the
Right.
best idea. So the very idea of this, the tractor producing the farmer, or the plowed field,
In other
is
words, the
ludicrous.
impersonal producing the personal, right?
Right,
That's what he's
right.
getting at.
And so you've probably used this, example before in apologetics, is if you come to a painting in the middle of the woods and there's no one around, did it culminate, the berries come together and create this picture of this forest within the forest, and the person would be forced to what, be 50-50. Well, it's possible that the wind swept it around and gobbled up this to look in this perfection, or do they see elements of their own possibility to be creative and say, well, no, clearly this is not the case. There's just a creator for this that's not here right now. And so this is kind of the idea that's talked about. But you know, why not one? Why not the other? And from our worldview, we should have an explanation for these answers, and maybe even within that worldview, why the other side has the answer that they do. So Christianity will offer actually both those as well. Yet, to many well-educated scientists, the primacy of the impersonal goes without saying, as it were. That's their presupposition. There's got to be some God particle, a small g God particle out there that is responsible for the quarks or the protons or whatever. And then you go,
And
well,
notice again, that's the non-personal,
right,
right?
right, and so you go, well, what makes that up? And it's like, well, listen, we have the God particle. Give us some time, and we'll figure out what makes the God particle. And is it particles all the way down? But what's at the very center of all existence? And so so far they haven't found that question, but maybe it's the personality aspect to it that is uh, goes without uh, goes without mention, not goes without saying, but like within the halls of academia, we can't do this. And I go back to Sabrina, German name that I'm probably going to mispronounce, so I'll just mention her book, Lost in the Math, where she's extolling her fellow mathematicians and scientists about why are we looking for a beautiful argument or a beautiful equation to come about as an explanation for our things that are related to the basic elements of like quantum physics. You know, aren't we scientists? Why are we looking for beauty and simplicity? We should be
Mm,
looking for
mm,
the answer. And so I appreciate that, and you can find a review of the book and why she actually is attempting to be a consistent atheist while also using biblical imagery in her book, which was pretty interesting to catch every once in a while. But so even with scientists, they want to view the impersonal, but when they're looking through their bag of tools, they want to talk about things that have order and make sense. But why should that be the case? Why why are we looking for the things that um, uh, tend to best fit in this random chance universe where we're not sure that even the answers that we do have are leading to truth rather than just survival?
mm, mm. And so again, the question is, why do scientists, why does modern man lean more toward the impersonal than the personal when we're seeking explanations?
Hmm.
Why is that the case, right? And he says the only even remotely possible explanation of this situation is the one given actually in the scriptures, in the Bible, that through God's existence, though his existence is clearly revealed to all, and Romans 1 talks about this,
Hmm.
rebellious mankind seeks to suppress that revelation and thus to operate on the assumption that God, the God of Scripture, does not exist. So he suggests the Scriptures give us an explanation for why we have this bent toward the impersonal as an ultimate explanation. It's because we're in rebellion, right? He says this is not the most, is this not the most likely reason for the almost universal but irrational preference for impersonalism over personalism? Is this rebellion?
All right. So in this section, he says that he has not, of course, proved the biblical personalism is true. He says he just merely set it forth over and against its antithesis to show the reader one fundamental aspect of the of apologetic task. So he says, we are called to stand firmly against the almost universal presuppositions that the universe is fundamentally impersonal. We must not allow the unbeliever to suppose what he usually supposes, that of course the impersonal is the ultimate. We must challenge him to consider the alternative and also to provide an answer for why he believes that as kind of the default. And if he
Mhm.
says that he is of that he is certain of his impersonalism, and if he despises anyone who thinks otherwise, is superstitious or stupid, we must challenge him and we must ask him to give for his view the kind of proof that he demands of us. So again, people are bringing certain values and outlooks and importances to the table, and so it's not just okay. You present yours. I've denounced it. Therefore, I'm right. And we should, as Christians, should also see that as well as um, we also have the burden of proof when it comes to these big explanations. It's not just well, you're wrong, therefore I'm right. It's you seem to be incorrect here, or you're living contradictory to what you're claiming here. And so, is there a better uh, um, model for the explanation of these three things: the metaphysics, the epistemology, and the ethics? And once we show him that the impersonal of is the product of irrational faith, we will be in a good position to present the one alternative to that impersonalism, the alternative presented in Scripture. And so that's what the the apologetic method does: is always be ready to give an account for the hope that you have, with gentleness and respect. And where do we find that answer? Is it not the role of Scripture um, to be the hope that we have and the account for the changed life that Paul attributes to be an answer that that we have the ability to walk and understand and know the things and not suppress the truth and our unrighteousness and find a consistent nature which we can uh, um walk in our metaphysics and recognize the personal aspect of the universe that's missing from the account of the age.
And so he's going through this metaphysical positions, right, of Christianity, the philosophy. And the first point here that he's making is that according to Christian philosophy, God is ultimate, and therefore he is, and as ultimate, absolute personality is ultimate. So God is personal, and that's the foundation, the ultimate reality with regard to metaphysics, right? And there's a bent or a lean in secularism toward the impersonal. And he suggests that, at best, it should be 50-50, but it seems irrational to lean toward the impersonal when, we have all of this uh, arguments and evidence that indeed ultimate um, is personal.